Queensland's compulsory third-party insurance scheme was reviewed earlier this year. The maximum payout to accident victims was increased, but Queensland still falls short compared to other states, and some people don't qualify at all. Now there are calls to balance the inequity. Kathy McLeish reports.
Until 3 years ago, Anne Taylor and her husband Ian had a predictable life.
Well, up until that point, it was work Monday to Friday, holidaying, beaching and caravanning with the family and doing a lot of things with grandchildren, and now it's just a totally different way of life.
Their world changed in an instant when a bus driver failed to see her on a pedestrian crossing.
I ended up losing both my legs. One is below the knee and the right one is just above the ankle, where the ankle would have been. Just doing the normal things that every day that we would do, mashing the potatoes, bringing them from the stove to the bench without trying to not spoil everything over top of yourself, and driving your car. Everything is just expense, but that's just what we have to cope with, and that's what we have to do daily.
Anne Taylor received compensation through Queensland's compulsory third-party, or CTP, insurance scheme. That's helped the couple meet the crippling costs of disability, like selling their old home to buy one that could be modified.
The cost involved in disability associated with people who've been severely injured in accidents is tremendous. And it ranges all the way from the big ticket items like modifying your house, modifying your vehicle, physiotherapy, hydrotherapy, visits to prostheticians. The costs are almost endless.
Lawyers have launched a campaign to bring Queensland into line with other states. Solicitor Ian Brown says if Anne Taylor had been injured in Victoria or New South Wales, the outcome would have been different. The maximum level of compensation for pain and suffering in Queensland is currently capped at around $280,000.
What we'd like to see is some of the changes that have been introduced over the last 16 years wound back.
In New South Wales and Victoria, it's up to $450,000. Queensland also covers the cost of carers, but that too is limited.
Often sends people into financial destitution as far as what can they afford.
Mark Henley is the CEO of the Spinal Injuries Association. The organisation wants reform too, particularly because under the Queensland scheme, some people get no compensation at all.
In Queensland, there's third-party compensation. In other states, there's no-fault insurance. So if you have a motor vehicle accident in Queensland, it's only if you are the third party. If you're the driver, you don't get covered for compensation.
He says there are economic arguments for parity. Vicki Field and Graham Streets were both in single vehicle accidents 16 years ago and received no compensation. But Vicki Field was assisted under a pilot scheme at the time.
I definitely wouldn't be here talking to you if I didn't have that support. I wouldn't have finished my degree. I wouldn't be working. You know, I would have had to have lived a very different life, and I could see it being quite a wasted life.
With no assistance, Graham Street's parents became his carers, with a devastating impact on his health and theirs. It was 11 years before he could establish a home and a career as an accountant.
Had I had that support network of funding and employment opportunities, it would have made a vast difference to my lifestyle.
Peter Eardley is the president of the Queensland Law Society.
The Society has been on record from day one saying that we don't like the civil liability scale. It has had the effect that it was intended to do, which was to discourage what you might call nuisance claims where there wasn't a lot of damage and the system was paying out too much money.
Queensland's Attorney-General says payouts have been increased by 20% this year. He says a no-fault insurance scheme would increase premiums, but the system is open to review.
There's no use adding more cost to the scheme if it can't be appropriately funded. And again, going back to where we once were, which was an insurance system in our state that was in crisis. We want to avoid that, but we want to make sure people are appropriately and fairly compensated. And if there's more that we need to do to support those people, we, of course, will look at that.
He says increases would come at a price.
There's a lot of pressure on household budgets. I'm not sure that we could increase premiums by up to $200 a year at this stage. So it's striking the balance.
Consider it to be an investment in getting their lives back on track, whereas they should be able to be really contributing people in the community, in employment, paying taxes, taking pressure off the health system, which has enormous burden from people with disability because they're not well supported. So consider it an investment, a good one.